This is Pod Populi.
Podcast for the people.
The Great Love Debate. It's the Great Love Debate.
The Great Love Debate. It's the Great Love Debate.
Hi again, everyone. It's Brian Howie. Welcome to The Great Love Debate, the world's #1 dating and relationship podcast since 2015. So somebody the other day asked me, who are your demographics for this Great Love Debate show? Who listens to this show? And of course, my answer is always say, everyone. Everyone listens to this show. But we do get numbers and we do get analytics and we do that. So I did poke around in it, and I was surprised. I always sort of said, well, I think our sweet spot is, people in their 30s and 40s and whatever, because a lot of that is who comes to our live shows. And it is a little bit different, the podcast, than our live shows for a lot of reasons. A lot of people in their 30s and 40s have a lot of disposable income, and it costs money to come to our live shows, and it doesn't cost that much money to listen to this podcast. I don't think it costs any money to listen to this podcast. So here you go with your free content, Great Love listeners. And we have a surprising amount of people under 20 who listen to this show. And we have a lot of people over 60 who listen to this show. So God bless everybody who listens to this show. Today I want to focus a little bit on the people who are I don't even know if they're still millennials. I think there's a next thing below. And if you're like, oh, I'm 35, I'm going to tune this off because this doesn't affect me, this will affect you. And the second part of what I want to talk about today absolutely affects you. So come back to your headphones because I want to talk to you about this. So one of the interesting things that I've talked about at our live shows, and I mentioned on the podcast, we had Dr. Drew. He did this podcast, and he's also done our live Great Love Debate show. He did it at the Hollywood Improv, and he made a comment that really stuck with me, and I bring it up all the time because I think it's a really relevant part of our dating moving forward. And he says that the coming storm, and he's right, is that the kid who is 14 years old now, by the time he's 18, he's going to be able to put on a helmet, be able to dial up somebody who looks like, I don't know, Ariana Grande, and she's going to speak to him virtually and give him a reasonably satisfying, intimate experience. That kid's never going to date. This sort of combination of PlayStation and porn is going to be able to get all of these young men and probably women to be able to hit a few buttons, create a virtual version of not just a celebrity, but maybe the girl they like in their class. That kid's never going to ask a girl out. That kid is never going to risk getting his heart broken. That kid's never going to have to spend any money on dating because of he's going to get 70% of the real experience with 0% of the downside. And that's obviously worrisome to me. It's worrisome to a lot of parents because a lot of parents of teens have two fears. One is, oh my God, my kid is never going to date or have a relationship. And number two is, oh my God, my kid is going to make me a grandparent way before I want to. So on both ends of the spectrum, parents are freaking out. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit. I have a friend of mine who really does deal with both confidence, and we're going to talk a lot about that. And she's doing a lot of really good work with teens, not just on dating, but in terms of all kinds of things they have to navigate. And it's a very complicated time. She has been on our aforementioned live stage many, many times. There's no place she would rather be than on a stage. She's not on a stage now, but she is on a microphone, which is the second place she'd like to be. She's the founder of Positive Presence Global, which is doing tremendous work for teens and their parents all over the place. And you're going to be like, well, how does this fit all into dating? Well, you shall see, because I have with me, you probably can't see her, but you can absolutely Google her, the lovely Michelle Marie King.
Hi, Brian.
How are you?
I love you. I love your show. I love everything about your life. I wish I was you some days.
Oh, do you? And that's what happens if you don't get help, kids. You don't want it to be me. Where does you deal with teens a lot? Where does dating even fit into their mindset in 2021? Is it something that because when I'm making you the same age as me. When we were kids, it was all about oh my God, crushes and boys and girls and all that kind of stuff. They have so many other things going on now. where does that even rank in terms of causes of both angst and time, you know?
I think that there's the difference, the two biggest things that we deal with are pain points and stress points. And I think that pain points are all of the, the yucky things that I say yucky to teens, but the awful things that we don't really want our teens to have to go through, like depression and anxiety and body image and eating disorders. And, like the worst of the worst stuff that you hear in everyday American society. But the stress points are the points that every teenager in history has ever dealt with, which are dating and grades and time management and, like the consistent ongoing stressors that everyday teens deal with every day. And I think that really we are doing about 50-50 split on both, unfortunately. I think since the pandemic, the pain points have really increased and the stress points have kind of become ancillary and outliers. But now I would say as we're starting to come out of the pandemic, it's definitely 50-50. And dating is a huge point in those kind of stress point areas that we're constantly talking about.
Yeah. So they still want to date. They still think about it. They're not just like, I'm going to have enough fun on Instagram and the guy's still like, oh my God, I hope that cute girl talks to me. That's still going on out there.
I don't know if they call it dating.
Right. What do they call it? That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they call it, they refer to it in general terms. I want to talk to this girl. I want to, We're
talking, we're hanging out. We do that. Yeah, there is some terminology. I'm like, what exactly? And by keeping it nebulous in their minds, they're protecting their heart. It means it's they always want to use the most casual of terms because they don't want to walk over to that precipice where it might get really scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the underlying, struggles with teenagers in relationship to dating and getting into serious, relationships with significant others is that the lack of confidence and lack of self-esteem, which talk about all the time, even with adults, that is the biggest thing that we work with teenagers on too, is that, in order for you to feel confident to go talk to that girl or talk to that boy or just introduce yourself with the potentiality of dating or going out somewhere or talking to them, developing a relationship, you got to first have that confidence and find that self-esteem in order to do so.
Yeah, I know. It's we bang our heads to death preaching about confidence and communication around here. And people say to me, well, that's easy for you to say because you're confident and you know how to communicate. Well, I might be confident now on a lot of things, but I certainly wasn't confident as a teenager. I was short. I was awkward. Everybody seemed to be doing things more easily than me. You wonder, at what point will this get better? It was stressful. It was awful. I'm not sure that ever goes away. Maybe you get used to that a little bit, but I think a lot of us all did come from that place. And I think the more you learn to navigate it helps and to be aware of it. I think that's one thing that you do. And that's one thing that I try and do is I don't ever want people to think that's you. I want people to think that's me. And the more people understand that me, you, Barack Obama, everybody, we went through a tough time at 15 and 25 and 30, every single day, and that you shouldn't feel alone feeling that way, especially when it comes to interacting with somebody that you might like or hope likes you.
100%. I tell a lot of my teenagers because they have these, I think, perception of, the social media side of what they see. There's this amazing influencer who's 15 years old who has this gorgeous body and perfect, face and perfect nose. And it's just this beautiful girl and everyone loves her. And she, of course, has a boyfriend. And, we're talking to a quote unquote normal teen that, is feeling like she's not confident, feeling like not even confident enough to post a picture on Instagram and is struggling with body image. And we tell our teens all the time that, just because you see this person have a perfect ideal life for you doesn't mean that they have a perfect ideal life for themselves. And so I think it's all about just finding what works for you, finding your own voice, finding what, shapes you into who you are. And once you kind of step into that confident side of you where you feel attached to everything that you're connecting yourself to, that confidence just exuberates organically through you. And that confidence, that light, that shine, we call it, starts to attract other people from those realms in your world. And then you become that girl to other people, in that realm. And I think it's just that kind of cataclysmic awakening that we're really helping our teenagers understand.
Yeah. And I think, especially now where people for the last, 5 years have tended to share the best things and the most positive sides of their life on social media, and look at me and I did this and I got, which really messed with a lot of people who either didn't have those experiences or weren't confident sharing those experiences. I do like, and you're part of this too, that there has been increased dialogue over the last couple of years that people do feel more comfortable sharing, of all ages, that they seek help. They go to therapy. I do this. I'm experiencing this. That's the upside of social media sharing. Not that everybody's sharing every little problem or detail of their lives or getting too personal, but letting people know. And a lot of celebrities are doing this too. Billie Eilish is doing this recently. A lot of people that people look up to. Demi Lovato is going through a time now.
The
like
Royals, yeah.
Right, the Royals. That's a good point. The fact that William and Harry are like, I experienced loss of a parent, and I experienced trouble with my dad, and this, and the more everybody shares what is not great, I think raises the collective great.
100%. Yeah, I call that shadow sharing. Like, when we share about our struggles with people, because I struggled a lot when I was like a young adult getting into the modeling industry. I was an international runway model, struggled with eating disorders, attempted to commit suicide. I went through all of this really, really dark moments in my life, and for 10 years I was ashamed of these things. It wasn't accepted back then. People didn't talk about anxiety, depression. They didn't have diagnoses back then that were really formalized. And so I really appreciate now. And what I realized after I had my daughter 6 years ago was that in order for me to help my daughter avoid these dark moments in her life, I had to share my darkest moments with her, with others, the people that she was going to be looking up to. And I'm so incredibly grateful that our society and our economy and everything is going to this place of the shift of sharing those dark moments of our lives, while also recognizing that there is stark contrast. Like we have to, I tell a lot of my students that in order to, really truly have appreciation for the greatest moments in your life, you have to have a contrasting awful moment in your life, or else if all you have are good things all the time,
right,
eventually they're going to all become neutral, and we're not going to have that gratitude. We're not going to have the contrast for it. And so I agree. I love the shadow sharing. And Brian, that's one thing that you do really well too. Like on stage, that's why I admire you so much, because man, like when my first show with you in Colorado, you were really open about and vulnerable. I mean, in of course a humorous way, but you were vulnerable about like when I was a kid, I was that changed. And the first couple of years we did the show, I felt above the fray. I'm like, I don't have trouble dating girls like me. I don't know what you're talking about. But a couple years into it, that really freaked me out, because I'm like, you know what? I don't know what a lot of people are talking about. These people are experiencing feelings and emotions, and I'm not there. So I went to therapy, and long history on that. I've talked about that on the show. But one of the things that about my therapy experience is when I told my sister to tell my parents that I left to invite them to the therapy I was going to, and sort of try and figure out what was wrong with our family. My mother's reaction is, that's a weird California thing he got involved in. Like I joined a cult. Like therapy was something so far off my parents' radar that it must have, that they almost took it personally. Like, he had such a wonderful childhood, how could he be in therapy? And I think that's the responsibility of the parents early on, is to talk to them and not just try and quiet the noise in their house. And I got to shut my kids up and I got to do this. What is triggering the tantrum? What is triggering the outburst? Why are they upset?
Is there a boy? Is there a girl at school? What is, and ask the questions and let them feel comfortable from an early age. We're good at the Great Love Debate. It's saying share your worst moments along with the good moments, and we'll try and figure out where it all. I don't know if parents are so scared of seeing